Welcome back to the Deep Dive for part 2 of our series, getting ready for the Modern Indian History section of the UPSC exam.
And for all those students out there interested in the modern history of India.
You got it. In our last deep dive, we covered, the big picture of modern Indian history, the major players. Exactly.
Yeah.
But today, we're going off the beaten path, exploring a lesser-known European power that also left its mark on India. The Danes.
Yeah, it's always interesting to look at these seemingly minor players.
Right.
Because they can actually reveal so much about the complexities of colonialism.
You got it. While the British and the French, well, they often take center stage.
They do.
Understanding the Danes, their motivations, and how they interacted with India adds a whole new layer of nuance
Absolutely,
to how we understand things. I think we often think of colonialism as this big...
monolithic force.
Like this one big...
hub.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But when you dig deeper, you see all these different European powers with their own agendas and strategies, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It wasn't a simple black and white picture. So are you ready to uncover this hidden chapter of Indian history?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. Buckle up. Imagine this. You're strolling through the streets of present-day Tranquebar.
Okay.
It's a coastal town in Tamil Nadu.
Oh.
You stumble upon Fort Dansborg. Have you ever seen it?
I have not, no.
Oh, it's a massive, imposing structure.
Wow.
That wouldn't look out of place in, a European history book.
Right.
And you might think, wait a minute, how did a piece of Denmark end up here, thousands of miles away from, Copenhagen?
Right.
That's where our story begins. The Danes first arrived in India in the early 17th century, right in the middle of that.
Scramble for the spice trade.
Oh, yeah.
The European scramble.
Everyone wanted a piece of the action.
Everyone wanted in on this lucrative spice trade.
So it's almost like a historical game of Risk.
Yes, that's a great analogy.
Each European power vying for territory and dominance.
Right, exactly.
But unlike the British or the French.
The Danes didn't initially set out to conquer vast swaths of land.
Okay.
They were more interested in establishing trading posts.
Right.
They wanted to secure their access to the riches of the East Indies.
The East Indies, and that's how Tranquebar, or as they called it, Tranquebar, became their main settlement, right?
Right.
And it became this bustling port, a hub for trade in spices, textiles, unfortunately, even slaves.
Right.
Which is... a dark part of this history.
Yeah, absolutely. We can't gloss over that,
right.
The negative aspects of colonialism.
Yeah.
But if we focus solely on the economic side, we miss a crucial part of the Danish story.
Yeah, what's that?
They were also deeply involved in religious missions, particularly through the Serampore Mission Press, which they established in Bengal in 1799.
The Serampore Mission Press. Yeah, that's the one that I always think of as like churning out all those religious texts and translations.
Oh, yeah.
So were they, I guess, like some other European powers trying to just convert everyone to Christianity?
Well, that's where things get a little bit...
more complicated.
More complex, yeah. While conversion was undoubtedly a part of their agenda, the Danes, particularly in Serampore, adopted a
slightly different approach.
A somewhat different approach, yeah.
Okay.
They focused heavily on education and cultural exchange.
Gotcha.
They translated the Bible into several Indian languages.
Oh, wow.
And this wasn't just for religious purposes, but also as a way to promote literacy and learning.
So they weren't just imposing their beliefs. They were also engaging with...
the existing culture, Indian culture and language.
Interesting. Did this approach make them more popular?
It's hard to say definitively.
Yeah.
But their methods certainly sparked debate.
Okay.
Even among the missionaries themselves.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Some argued for a more direct approach to conversion.
Okay.
While others, like William Carey,
the key figure in the Serampore mission, believed that education and cultural understanding were essential for long-term impact.
Fascinating. So even within the Colonial project, there were these
internal disagreements?
Yeah, and different schools of thought.
Different schools of thought, absolutely.
And shows how complex the motivations were.
Exactly.
But all of this stemmed from the Danish East India Company, right?
It did.
So what was their story? How did they manage to carve out their own space in this crowded colonial landscape?
Well, it all started with a rather intriguing character.
Okay.
Marcellus de Boschauer.
Okay.
A Dutch explorer
all
who had been sailing the Indian Ocean.
Okay.
He saw the potential for profit in the East Indies.
Right.
And he decided to pitch his idea to King Christian IV of Denmark.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So he's Dutch.
He's Dutch, but he goes to the Danish king.
Wow.
The king, ever ambitious,
of course,
saw an opportunity to compete with the other European powers.
And secure a slice of those lucrative trade routes.
So the Danes just kind of jumped on the bandwagon.
They did. They weren't pioneers.
Right.
Like the Portuguese.
But they saw a chance to get in on the action.
Exactly.
And in 1616,
King Christian V granted a charter to establish the Danish East India Company.
wow, so they were modeled after the Dutch and British companies.
Yes.
And what was their goal?
To secure trading rights,
Okay.
establish settlements, and ultimately profit from these exotic goods.
Right, from the east.
Flowing from the east, exactly.
And profit, they did.
And they did, for a while at least.
Yeah, for a while.
Tranquebar became a major trading center,
Right.
and the company grew in influence.
But they were never quite as powerful or as expansive as their British or Dutch counterparts, right?
Right.
So they faced some constant challenges.
They did.
I imagine the competition was pretty fierce.
It was.
Not just from other European powers, but also from local rulers, right?
Absolutely. The Danes were constantly walking a tightrope.
I can imagine.
Navigating a very complex web
Alliances.
and rivalries.
They had to contend with the powerful Maratha Confederacy.
In Western India.
Right. The Mughal Empire in the north.
Right.
And even other European powers.
Like the British and the French.
Yeah. Everyone was trying to outmaneuver each other.
A constant game of chess.
Yeah. Game of chess on a grand scale.
With the fate of nations.
Right. Hanging in the balance.
Absolutely.
And amidst all of this,
geopolitical maneuvering,
the Danes are trying to establish themselves,
right,
make profits, spread their religion, and even influence the culture.
Right. It was a wild ride.
It must have been a wild ride. But if they were so active for over 2 centuries, why don't we hear more about them?
That's a great question.
Their story just seems to have faded.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, that's a question we'll delve into a bit further in our next segment.
Okay.
But for now, let's just take a moment to appreciate just how much the Danes managed to accomplish.
Okay.
Despite the odds.
They really did.
They built a trading empire.
Right.
They engaged in religious and cultural exchange.
Yeah.
And they left their mark on India's history, even if it's often overshadowed by those bigger players.
It's a reminder that history is full of these hidden stories, these nuanced perspectives that can really challenge our assumptions and deepen our understanding of the past. And for those of you preparing for the UPSC exams,
right,
understanding these lesser-known players like the Danes is crucial for demonstrating
that comprehensive grasp of history.
Yeah, that examiners are looking for.
Absolutely.
And for everyone else.
It's just fascinating.
It is fascinating.
To uncover these
4 chapters.
Right. They enrich our understanding of India's diverse and complex past.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But before we move on to the decline of the Danish presence in India, we need to understand one more crucial aspect of their impact, and that is the Serampore Mission Press.
Right.
And its lasting legacy.
Okay.
We'll explore that in detail after a quick break, so stay tuned.
Stay with us. You know, the Serampore Mission Press wasn't just like, a printing house churning out religious pamphlets.
Right.
It was really this hub of intellectual activity.
Right.
A catalyst for social and cultural change in 19th century India.
I read somewhere they published the first Bengali newspaper.
They did, yeah.
That's a big deal, right?
Huge.
Like, imagine bringing news and information to people in their own language.
In their own language for the first time.
For the first time?
It was called Samachar Darpan.
Okay.
And it covered a wide range of topics, from current events to literary criticism.
Wow.
And, it even played a key role in shaping public opinion.
Oh, wow.
And fostering this sense of Bengali identity.
That's fascinating. It really highlights how the Danes, even though they were a relatively small colonial power, they managed to make some pretty significant contributions to Indian society. Like, they weren't just focused on trade and profit. They were engaging with the culture, the language, like the very fabric of life in India.
Yeah.
It almost makes you wonder if their approach to colonialism was, I don't know, more about collaboration than domination.
It's a thought-provoking question, and one that historians continue to debate.
Right.
In addition to the newspaper, the Serampore Mission Press also published textbooks.
Oh, wow.
Dictionaries, grammars in various Indian languages.
Wow.
They even translated and printed ancient Sanskrit texts.
Really?
Yeah, making them accessible to a wider audience.
So they were almost in a way, helping to preserve, disseminate
exactly.
Indian knowledge and traditions.
Absolutely.
That's such a contrast
Yeah.
to, I think the image we often have of colonial power is like just trying to erase local cultures.
Right.
And impose their own.
It's a complex picture for sure.
Right.
We can't ignore the fact that their primary goal was to spread Christianity.
Yeah.
But they also, I think, recognize the importance of understanding and respecting the existing cultures.
Yeah.
And this nuanced approach really did have a lasting impact on education and literature in India.
Okay. It's almost as if they were planting these seeds of cultural exchange
that
would eventually blossom into something far greater than they could have ever imagined.
Absolutely.
But even with their unique approach, their story seems to have been largely forgotten.
It has.
We touched upon this earlier, but like what led to the decline of the Danish presence in India?
Yeah.
They were there for over 200 years.
Right.
And then poof, they're gone.
Yeah, well, their decline was a gradual process.
Okay.
A confluence of factors, both internal and external.
Right. It's kind of like that geopolitical chess game.
Exactly.
We talked about earlier.
The Danes were ultimately outmaneuvered by more powerful players.
Primarily the British, I imagine.
Yeah, primarily the British.
They were the undisputed champions of that era.
Oh, yeah. Building their vast empire.
Gobbling up territories.
It's left and right.
Left and right, exactly. Yeah. And the Danes just couldn't keep up.
They couldn't.
So what happened?
Well, they faced financial difficulties.
Okay.
Their trade routes were disrupted.
Right.
By wars and competition.
Okay.
And their small military force was just no match for the might of the British East India Company.
So it's a classic case of survival of the fittest, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so.
In the, cutthroat world.
Yeah.
Of colonial expansion.
Right. The bigger, the stronger, the more ruthless you were, the more likely you were to win that game.
It's still intriguing to think about how things might have been different.
Right.
If the Danes had managed to hold on.
Yeah. Counterfactual history.
It's always fun to think about those things.
It is, but in the end, the Danes, faced with these mounting challenges, they decided to sell their possessions in India to the British.
When was that?
In 1845.
1845. And just like that, their chapter in Indian history came to a close.
It's almost like a bittersweet ending, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
They left their mark. They contributed to Indian society in some unique ways.
Who did?
But ultimately, they just couldn't compete with the, A
rising tide.
Yeah, the rising tide of British power. And for those of you listening who are prepping for the UPSC, this is exactly the kind of nuance that I think you need to grasp.
Absolutely.
Well, not just the major events, but the smaller players, the factors that influence their rise and fall, and how it all fits into, the grand narrative of Indian history.
It's like those hidden clues in a detective novel.
Oh, I like that.
You might overlook them at first, but they often turn out to be crucial for solving the mystery.
And while the Danish chapter in Indian history might seem like a minor detail,
it offers some valuable insights into the complexities of colonialism.
Absolutely.
The interplay of different European powers and those lasting impacts, both positive and negative, that they had on India.
And for those of you who are, just history enthusiasts, it's a reminder that there's always more to discover.
Yeah, always more to learn.
More layers to peel back, more stories waiting to be told.
I like that. But even though the Danish presence in India officially ended in 1845, their legacy continues to be felt.
It does?
Particularly in the realm of architecture.
Think about it.
Okay.
Fort Dansborg in Tranquebar, it still stands today.
It does. Wow.
It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Oh, wow.
And a tangible reminder of their colonial past. Their architectural contributions blended European styles with Indian elements, creating these unique structures that are still admired today.
It's like they left these architectural echoes, whispering tales of a forgotten era.
Yeah, and it's not just Fort Dansborg. There are other churches and mansions and even cemeteries that reflect the Danish presence.
I was looking at some pictures online of the New Jerusalem Church.
Oh, yeah.
In a Tranquebar.
It's a beautiful example of Danish colonial architecture.
It is. The blend of European design and Indian craftsmanship is really striking.
It's really something.
Yeah. Makes you want to hop on a plane and go explore these places for yourself.
Absolutely.
And see firsthand how history has left its mark on the landscape.
And for those of you preparing for the UPSC exams, remember, these architectural remnants aren't just pretty pictures. They're primary sources.
They are.
Offering valuable insights into the cultural exchange and social dynamics of that Danish colonial period.
It's like having a conversation with the past, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Understanding how different cultures interacted and influenced each other.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that history isn't just about,
dates and battles.
Dates and battles, yeah. Like it's about people, their lives, their beliefs, and how those things manifested in the physical world.
Exactly. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Danish presence in India, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned.
Yeah, I think we've uncovered a hidden chapter.
We have.
Of Indian history, a story often overshadowed by those dominant narratives.
Of British and French colonialism.
Right, exactly.
We've seen how this small European power, driven by, ambition and a desire for profit, they navigated those treacherous waters of colonial expansion.
Absolutely.
We've explored their unique approach to colonialism, one that really emphasized trade, religious missions, and that cultural exchange, leaving behind a legacy that's still visible today.
Absolutely.
And for those of you gearing up for the UPSC exams, we've highlighted, I think, the importance of going beyond the textbooks, delving into those lesser-known aspects of history that can really set you apart and demonstrate a deeper understanding of India's past.
It's not just about memorizing facts, right? It's about analyzing those facts, understanding the motivations behind them, and connecting them to the broader themes and trends of history.
I like to think of it as a puzzle.
Oh, yeah.
Each piece, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, contributes to the overall picture.
Absolutely.
And the Danish presence in India.
Yeah.
Though a relatively small piece adds a unique layer of complexity and nuance to that picture.
For sure.
So as you continue your studies, keep those history books open. Those podcasts playing.
Absolutely.
And those minds engaged.
And never underestimate the power of curiosity.
Oh, that's good.
Those why questions, those moments of wonder, those are the sparks that ignite a true passion for learning. And who knows, maybe someday you'll be the one uncovering a hidden chapter. Adding your own unique insights to this ever-evolving narrative.
To the narrative of India's past.
Absolutely. Now, before we sign off, a quick reminder to subscribe to the Deep Dive.
Yes. Subscribe.
For more insightful explorations of history and culture.
And everything in between.
And everything in between, exactly. And if you enjoyed this episode...
Yeah, give us a like, leave a comment.
Yeah, we love hearing from our listeners.
We do.
Especially those of you prepping for those UPSC exams.
Your feedback helps us tailor the content.
It does. It really helps us tailor the content.
To what you need.
To what you need, exactly. So until next time...
Keep exploring, keep learning.
Keep exploring, keep learning.
And keep those historical flames burning bright.
Burning bright. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of the Danes in India.
We'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time for another adventure into the past.